Hey, this is Jeff Garrett from the Ascent Performance Group. Today I want to talk to you about a book called The 10X Rule, subtitled If You're Not First, You're Last. It's by Grant Cardone. The book was written in 2011 and it has 23 chapters. As you may have noticed, we're doing a little bit differently today. Usually I have a hardcover book, and today I worked off the mini iPad. So I do read books on iPad. I read books on regular books. I listen to audiobooks, paperback, hardback, you name it. I read it in all different ways, and there are a lot of different ways today, fortunately, that we can read and listen to books. So I'm going to start off with chapter 1. And chapter 1 is what is the 10X rule. A good place to start. You must set targets that are 10 times what you think you want, and then do 10 times what you think it will take to accomplish those targets. Massive thoughts must be followed by massive actions. So Grant's saying here that we have to take 10 times, think of it in taking 10 times as long to get it done, and put 10 times as much effort than we thought originally that we were going to have to. So 10 times the thoughts and 10 times the actions of other people is what he says. The 10X rule is about domination mentality. Grant talks in the book about not competing. He talks about dominating. He says, you never do what others do. You must be willing to do what they won't do, and even take actions that you might seem unreasonable and that other people think are unreasonable. And that's one of the things we'll talk about a little bit later too. The following is the basic series of mistakes people make when setting out to achieve goals, and there's 4 of them. 1 is mistargeting by setting objectives that are too low and don't allow for enough correct motivation. Number 2, severely underestimating what it will take in terms of actions, resources, money, and energy to accomplish the goal and the target. 3, spending too much time competing and not enough time dominating their sector. And number 4, underestimating the amount of adversity they will need to overcome in order to actually attain their desired goal. So chapter 2 goes on why the 10X rule is vital. Grant says, for every project in which I have ever been involved, I've underestimated the time, the energy, the money, and the effort necessary to bring the project to the point of success. Have you ever been there? I have. Any client I targeted, he says, or new sector of business into which I ventured has always taken 10 times more calls, emails, mail, and contacts than I originally projected. Regardless of how superior your product is, service, or proposition, I assure you there will be something you don't anticipate. And there always is, isn't there? He says if there's going to be work, it would depend on my ability to increase my efforts, not my excuses. He says the marketplace will sense by your actions that you are a force to be reckoned with and are not going away, and it will begin to respond accordingly. And then he says, for some reason, people who develop an idea about something they want to bring to the market tend to embrace a sense of optimism that frequently causes them to grossly misjudge what it will take to complete their project. Sometimes, as he says, you get overly optimistic as the person that has the idea or is running the project, and we can grossly overestimate that optimism and underestimate the time it's going to take to do the project. I know you've probably heard this before, but success does not merely happen. It is the result of relentless, proper actions taken over time. So chapter 3, what is success? However, wherever you find it, the most crucial things to know about success are, in order to keep it, are the following. 1, success is important. 2, success is your duty. 3, there is no shortage of success. So success is your duty, chapter 4. I literally began to see success as an ethical issue, a duty to my family, company, and future, rather than as something that may or may not happen to me. He's basically stating that he saw it as his duty to be successful. If you don't consider it your duty to live up to your potential, then you simply won't. And then chapter 5, there's no shortage of success. It's kind of like that unlimited pie type of thing. People always say, well, you take one piece of the pie, then there's only so much left for the rest of us. What Grant says here is, unlike a product that is manufactured and inventoried, there's no limit to how much success can be created. You can have as much as you want, so can I, being Grant, and your achievement does not prevent or limit my ability to achieve. So if you achieve, doesn't mean that I can't achieve. It doesn't mean that we can't achieve together and that we can't increase our achievement. Success is not a zero-sum game. There are many winners. Success is not a commodity or resource that has limited resources. It's unlimited. Grant's found that most, if not all, shortages are simply manufactured notions. Chapter 6, Assume Control for Everything. Success is not something that happens to you. It's something that happens because of you and because of your actions you take. The 10x rule refers to massive amounts of action taken persistently over time. In order to make good things happen more often, you cannot afford to think like a victim or act like a victim. Good things don't happen to victims. Bad things do quite frequently. And all you have to do is ask them. If you ever ask somebody, that's a victim what their mentality, what are you thinking? And it's always negative. It's a myth and a falsehood to think that success just happens or that just happens to some people. I know that the approach I'm suggesting works. Grant says because it is the one I've used to accumulate my own success. I didn't just grow up with all the tools and everything he needed. He was willing to take massive levels of action and assume control and take responsibility for every outcome. And that's something today that's missing a lot of times, is taking responsibility for our actions. Chapter 7, 4 Degrees of Action. Disciplined, consistent, and persistent actions are more a determining factor in the creation of success than any other combination of things. Most people fail only because they are operating at the wrong degree of action. To simplify action, we're going to break down your choices into 4 simple categories or degrees of action. You take 4 choices are 1, do nothing, 2, retreat, 3, take normal levels of action, or 4, take massive action. So guess which one Grant's going to recommend that we take? Right, number 4, massive action. So average is a failing formula, chapter 8. The addiction to average, Grant says, can kill the possibility of making your dreams a reality. Consider the following statistics. The average worker reads an average of less than 1 book a year and works on average of 37.5 hours a week. The same person makes 319 times less money than the top CEOs who claim they read at least 60 books a year. Or if you break that down, that's 5 books a month. So the difference between being average and not average, if you're a CEO, would be 60 books a year. Chapter 9, 10x goals. As far as I'm concerned, nothing worth doing is done only once or twice a year. The things upon which your life depends most are based on the actions you take daily. That is why I make sure it does 2 things. 1, write my goals down every day. 2, I choose objectives that are just out of my reach. This opens up to my full potential. The 10x rule is meant for a few people obsessed with creating an exceptional life and who want to be in charge of the process. So he recommends doing the following. Set 10x targets, align them with your purposes, write them down every day when you wake up and when you go to sleep. Chapter 10, competition is for sissies. Forward thinkers, they don't copy. They don't compete, they create. They also don't do what others have done. Never make it your goal to just compete. Instead, do everything you can do to dominate your sector in order to avoid spending your time chasing someone else. So as I said earlier, Grant believes in dominating, not just competing. Chapter 12, obsession isn't a disease, it's a gift. Most people make only enough effort for it to feel like work, whereas the most successful follow up every action with an obsession to see it through to reward. Chapter 14, expand, never contract. The idea of constant, unwavering expansion is counterintuitive or even unpopular. However, if you separate from the rest of the pack more than any other single activity, the task of expanding when others are contracting should not be reduced to some simple, simplistic concept. Don't rest and don't stop, ever. So, that counterintuitive process of not contracting but expanding when others are contracting. very contrary to what normal people, business people think. Chapter 15, burn the place down. Don't rest. Don't ever stop ever. Chapter 16, fear is the great indicator. Sooner or later, you'll experience fear when you're taking new actions at new levels. Everybody's going to experience fear. In fact, if you aren't, you're probably not doing enough of the right things. And he defines fear as an acronym that stands for false events appearing real. You may have heard false evidence appearing real too as that acronym. And then chapter 17, the myth of time management. Successful people think in terms of all, whereas unsuccessful people tend to place limits on themselves. So it's that abundance mentality of that success mindset. Chapter 18, criticism is a sign of success. Although getting criticized is certainly not the best feeling in the world, I have great news. Receiving criticism is a surefire sign that you are well on your way. Criticism is not something that you want to avoid. Rather, it's what you must expect to come your way when you're starting something big. So if you're going to start something big, it's really important that you realize going into it that you're going to have criticism. People aren't going to like what you're doing. People generally don't like success. They don't like to see other people have success. Chapter 19, customer satisfaction is the wrong target. Increasing customers is the right target, what Grant says. This doesn't mean customer satisfaction isn't important. He says, let me explain simply. Customer satisfaction doesn't concern me very much. Why? Because I know when we over-deliver to our clients and provide customer service that is well beyond satisfactory, we over-deliver to every client and we never say no until we absolutely have to. So it becomes more of an expectation of that delivery than worrying about it, just knowing that, hey, I'm driving the activities that need to be done to create it. To be clear, you certainly want to deliver and exceed on the promises you make. However, if you focus on delivering exceptional 10x service prior to acquisition, this part will come naturally after acquisition. Chapter 20, omnipresence. The word omnipresence conveys the concept of being everywhere in all places at all times. And Grant did something to create this. He recorded over 200 videos, wrote over 150 blogs, did over 700 radio interviews in a period of 18 months. And he's getting national TV exposure because of that on cable TV, Fox, CNBC, NBC, CNN, WSJ, Wall Street Journal Radio, and more started. And then in the same period, he personally wrote over 2,000 posts on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And all this was in addition to his office doing a lot of other activity back behind the scenes in the marketing department. So his face, his name, his articles, and methodologies and videos, they started showing up everywhere. And people were saying to him, I see your name everywhere. And I was he says he was completely focused on expanding his footprint and making himself known to the rest of the world rather than worrying about a small group of critics. So how many of us worry about those critics? Chapter 21, excuses. An excuse is justification for doing or not doing something. Nothing happens to you, it happens because of you. And then chapter 22, successful or unsuccessful. Successful people talk, think, and approach situations, challenges, and problems differently than most people. And they definitely think about money differently. They have a can-do attitude. I'm going to go through a whole list here. Number 1, have a can-do attitude. Number 2, believe that I'll figure it out. Number 3, focus on opportunity. 4, love challenges. 5, seek to solve problems. 6, persist until successful. 7, take risks. 8, be responsible, unreasonable. We talked about it earlier. Be unreasonable. People know they cannot afford to act in accordance with the agreed upon realities. If they do, the supposed impossible can never be possible for them, he says. Bringing 10x requires thinking and acting unreasonably. Number 9, be dangerous. Number 10, create wealth. Number 11, readily take action. 12, always say yes. 13, habitually commit. 14, go all the way. 16, demonstrate courage. He says attack, dominate, and keep your attention on the future. Then continue to repeat your actions and your courage will grow. 17, embrace change. The willingness to accept change is a great quality of the successful. We've talked about accepting change before. 18, determine and take the right approach. and take the right approach. The successful know that they can quantify what works and what doesn't work, whereas the unsuccessful focus solely on what doesn't work. 19, break traditional ideas. Highly successful individuals are not concerned with the way things have always been done, pet peeve of mine. They're interested in finding new and better ways. 20, be goal-oriented. 21, be on a mission. 22, have a high level of motivation. 23, be interested in results. Successful people don't value effort of work or time spent on an activity. They value the results. The greatest regret of my life, he says, is that I initially set targets and goals based on what was realistic rather than giant, radical thinking. Big think changes the world. Surround yourself with everything you can that inspires you to think big, act big, and reach your full potential, he says. The successful are a lot like magicians. They don't deal in other people's realities. Instead, they're bent on creating a new reality for themselves. That is different from the one that others accept. 26, commit first, figure out later. 27, be highly ethical. I believe it all starts there. 28, be interested in the group. You can only do as well as the people around you. If everyone else is at a certain level, you're going to not hit that higher level. 29, be dedicated to continuous learning. The most successful CEOs, as we talked about earlier, read at least 60 books a year. And they also attend more than 6 conferences a year. The most successful people that Grant says he knows read everything they can get their hands on. They approach a $10 book or a $30 book as though it has a process or potential to make him $1 million. 30, be uncomfortable. Those who succeed are at one point or another in their lives willing to put themselves in situations that they were uncomfortable, whereas unsuccessful, they seek comfort in all their decisions. 31, reach up in relationships. The successful constantly talk about having people around them that are smarter, brighter, and more creative. Great hiring strategy too, by the way. It's unlikely that you'll hear one of them say, I got here by surrounding myself with people just like myself, surrounding myself. Reach up, never sideways, and never down. 32, be disciplined. And discipline is what you use to complete any activity until the activity, regardless of how uncomfortable, becomes your normal operating procedure. Chapter 23, getting started with 10X. A few things that you need to keep in mind as you start. Number 1, do not reduce your goals as you write them. Keep your goals high. Number 2, do not get lost in the details and how to accomplish them at this point. That usually comes later as you're into the goal and you're trying to figure it out. You aren't going to have it figured out right up front, he says. Number 3, ask yourself, what actions can I take today to move me towards these goals? Number 4, take whatever actions you come up with, regardless of what they are or how you feel. 5, do not prematurely value the outcome of your actions. And 6, go back each day and review the list. So let's review what the 10X rule is. 10X rule is a concept based on understanding the correct estimation of how much effort and thought are required to get anything done successfully. Where others perform one action, the 10X rule says to do 10 actions and to set targets 10 times higher than you first imagined. So this is a great book, especially for entrepreneurs and business people. I recommend that you obtain a copy if this interested you. And I want you to remember to be great. And for coaching opportunities, you can contact me at jgarrett@theascentperformancegroup.com or coachjeffgarrett@gmail.com if that's easier. And you can also contact me on my website, which is www.theascentperformancegroup.com. Thank you, and be great.